What if everything you've been told about aging is incomplete? What if the real secret to staying young isn't found in expensive creams, complicated diets, or the latest medical breakthrough, but in something far more profound that Edgar Cayce revealed during his trance readings nearly a century ago? The truth is, Cayce's approach to vitality and youthfulness was so radically different from conventional thinking that even today most people have never heard about it. And what he discovered might completely transform how you think about the aging process. If you're ready to explore wisdom that challenges everything you thought you knew about staying young, hit that like button and subscribe right now so you never miss these profound teachings. Drop a comment sharing what staying young means to you, and I'll mark every single one with a heart because your journey toward vitality matters. Now let's dive into what Edgar Cayce really taught about the forgotten key to youthfulness. Edgar Cayce gave over 14,000 documented readings during his lifetime, and woven throughout these sessions was a consistent message about human vitality that contradicted the medical understanding of his era. While doctors focused exclusively on the physical body, Cayce insisted that true youthfulness required harmony between three inseparable aspects of our being: the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. He called this the holistic approach, though that term wouldn't become popular until decades after his death. In his readings on health and rejuvenation, Cayce made a startling claim that puzzled many people at the time. He said that the body renews itself completely at the cellular level, and that the primary factor determining whether we age gracefully or deteriorate rapidly isn't genetics or luck. It's something far more within our control. According to Cayce, the quality of our thoughts, the state of our emotions, and our spiritual alignment directly influence how our cells regenerate. Think about that for a moment. Cayce was telling people in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s that their mental and spiritual states were actually controlling their physical aging process. This was revolutionary. Medicine at that time treated the body like a machine that simply wore out over time. But Cayce saw something entirely different. He saw the human body as a living temple constantly rebuilding itself, and the blueprints for that rebuilding came from our consciousness itself. So what was the forgotten key? What did Cayce identify as the master principle for staying young? The answer centers on one word that appears repeatedly throughout his readings on vitality: circulation. But Cayce wasn't just talking about blood circulation, though he emphasized that too. He was talking about the circulation of life force itself through every level of our being. Cayce taught that life force, what he sometimes called the creative energy or the divine spark, must flow freely through our physical, mental, and spiritual bodies. When that flow becomes blocked or stagnant at any level, aging accelerates. When it circulates freely, the body maintains its natural vitality regardless of chronological age. This circulation principle became the foundation of everything else he taught about youthfulness. On the physical level, Cayce gave specific guidance that was remarkably ahead of his time. He emphasized the importance of spinal health, explaining that the spine is the central pathway through which life force flows into the body's various systems. He frequently recommended osteopathic adjustments and spinal manipulations to keep this pathway clear. The nervous system, according to Cayce, acts as the bridge between spiritual energy and physical manifestation. He also stressed the critical importance of eliminations. Cayce explained that toxins and waste materials that aren't properly eliminated from the body create a burden that accelerates the aging process. He often recommended colonics, hydrotherapy, and dietary approaches that supported the body's natural detoxification systems. In reading after reading, he emphasized that internal cleanliness was essential for maintaining youthfulness. The diet recommendations Cayce gave focused on alkalinity and freshness. He consistently advised people to eat more vegetables than any other food group, particularly leafy greens. He warned against too many fried foods, too much red meat, and excessive starches and sugars. He emphasized eating foods that were as close to their natural state as possible. But here's what made Cayce's dietary guidance unique. He didn't present it as a rigid system. He explained that the attitude with which you eat matters almost as much as what you eat. This brings us to the mental aspect of Cayce's youth formula, and this is where his teachings become truly distinctive. Cayce insisted that our mental patterns and emotional states create the environment in which our cells either thrive or deteriorate. He taught that chronic worry, persistent fear, ongoing resentment, and harbored anger literally poison the body's systems and accelerate aging. In numerous readings, Cayce explained that negative mental states disrupt the glandular system, particularly the endocrine glands that regulate everything from metabolism to cellular regeneration. When someone lives in a constant state of stress, anxiety, or bitterness, their endocrine system becomes imbalanced, and this imbalance manifests as premature aging. The body simply cannot maintain youthfulness when the mind is trapped in destructive patterns. But Cayce didn't just identify the problem. He provided the solution, and it was deceptively simple: changing our mental habits through deliberate spiritual practice. He emphasized the power of constructive thinking, encouraging people to consciously redirect their thoughts away from negativity and toward ideals that uplifted and inspired them. One practice Cayce recommended repeatedly was the discipline of setting a spiritual ideal. He taught that each person should identify their highest spiritual purpose or value, then align their thoughts and actions with that ideal daily. This practice, he explained, creates coherence between the spiritual, mental, and physical aspects of our being, and that coherence is what allows life force to circulate freely. Meditation was another cornerstone of Cayce's approach to maintaining vitality. He didn't describe meditation as merely a relaxation technique or stress management tool. According to Cayce, meditation is the practice of attuning ourselves to the divine source of all life. During meditation, we open pathways for spiritual energy to flow into our physical bodies, literally recharging our cellular batteries with life force. Cayce gave specific guidance on meditation practice throughout his readings. He emphasized the importance of spinal alignment during meditation, explaining that the spine serves as the antenna through which we receive spiritual energy. He talked about the awakening of spiritual centers within the body, which correspond to the endocrine glands. When these centers are awakened and balanced through meditation, the entire body experiences rejuvenation. But here's where Cayce's teaching reaches its deepest level. He explained that the ultimate key to staying young isn't found in any technique or practice alone. The real secret lies in understanding our true nature as spiritual beings. According to Cayce, we age because we forget who we really are. We identify with the physical body and believe we are limited, mortal, and subject to decay. But Cayce insisted this is an illusion. In his readings on the nature of consciousness and existence, Cayce taught that we are eternal spiritual beings temporarily inhabiting physical bodies. The soul itself never ages. It is the source of perpetual life and vitality. When we reconnect with our spiritual essence through daily practice, prayer, and meditation, we tap into a wellspring of renewable energy that can keep the physical body vibrant far longer than most people imagine possible. Cayce also emphasized the transformative power of service to others. He taught that when we dedicate our lives to being a channel of healing, love, and assistance for others, we keep the life force circulating through us. Selfishness and self-centeredness, according to Cayce, cause stagnation, while selfless service keeps us youthful and vibrant. This wasn't just spiritual philosophy. Cayce believed it had direct physical effects on our vitality. One of the most profound principles Cayce shared about youthfulness was the importance of purpose. He explained that people who maintain a clear sense of purpose and meaning in their lives tend to stay younger longer. When someone has a reason to get up each morning, a contribution to make, a mission to fulfill, their body responds by maintaining its vitality. Conversely, when people retire from meaningful activity and lose their sense of purpose, aging often accelerates dramatically. The concept of attitudes was central to Cayce's understanding of aging. He frequently told people that their attitudes toward life, toward others, and toward themselves were more important than almost any other factor in determining how they aged. An attitude of gratitude, joy, and optimism creates a body chemistry that supports youthfulness. An attitude of complaint, cynicism, and negativity creates a body chemistry that promotes deterioration. Cayce also addressed the role of the will in maintaining vitality. He taught that we have far more control over our aging process than we typically believe. Through the consistent application of our will, aligned with spiritual ideals, we can direct the body's regenerative processes. This wasn't wishful thinking or positive affirmations alone. Cayce was describing a genuine power of consciousness to influence physical reality. In his readings on longevity and vitality, Cayce made it clear that staying young isn't about fighting against a natural process. It's about aligning with the natural flow of life force that wants to sustain and renew us. The body is designed to regenerate. Every cell contains intelligence and healing power, but we block that natural regeneration through our mental patterns, emotional habits, and spiritual disconnection. The practical application of Cayce's teachings on youthfulness comes down to daily choices and consistent practices, starting each day with prayer or meditation to attune to the divine source, maintaining spinal health through movement, stretching, or therapeutic work, eating foods that support alkalinity and vitality, monitoring our thoughts and redirecting them toward constructive patterns, practicing forgiveness to release the emotional toxins that age us prematurely, engaging in meaningful service that keeps life force flowing through us. But perhaps the most important element of Cayce's approach was his insistence on patience and persistence. He frequently reminded people that transformation doesn't happen overnight. The body took years to reach its current state, and it requires consistent effort over time to restore optimal vitality. Yet he also emphasized that it's never too late to begin. The body's regenerative capacity is remarkable, and when we start providing it with the right conditions, physically, mentally, and spiritually, it responds with renewed vigor. Cayce's vision of youthfulness wasn't about looking like a teenager when you're 70. It was about maintaining the vitality, flexibility, and joy of someone who is fully alive at any age. He taught that chronological age and biological age are not the same thing, and that through conscious application of spiritual principles, we can slow and even reverse many aspects of the aging process. What makes Cayce's approach so powerful is that it addresses aging at its root cause, rather than just treating symptoms. Modern approaches focus on external interventions like surgery, medications, and cosmetic procedures. Cayce taught that real youthfulness radiates from within, from the quality of our consciousness and the flow of spiritual energy through our being. The forgotten key to staying young that Edgar Cayce revealed isn't a secret technique or hidden knowledge. It's the recognition that we are spiritual beings with the power to influence our physical reality through consciousness. It's the understanding that body, mind, and spirit are one integrated system, and that vitality depends on harmony among all three. It's the practice of daily attunement to the divine source of life that renews us from the inside out. As you reflect on these teachings, consider this. What would your life look like if you fully embraced Cayce's holistic approach to youthfulness? What if you committed to daily meditation, conscious eating, constructive thinking, and purposeful service? What if you truly believed that your body is designed to regenerate and that you have the power to support that regeneration through your choices? The wisdom Edgar Cayce shared during his readings came from a source beyond his conscious mind. He called it the universal consciousness, the Akashic records, the divine intelligence that knows all things. And according to that source, staying young isn't about defying nature. It's about aligning with the deepest truth of our nature as eternal spiritual beings, temporarily expressing through physical form. This perspective transforms everything. Aging is no longer an enemy to fight or a fate to accept. It becomes a feedback mechanism showing us where we're out of alignment with our spiritual essence. Every sign of premature aging, every loss of vitality, becomes an invitation to look deeper, to reconnect with Source, to restore the natural circulation of life force that wants to keep us vibrant and alive. If these teachings resonate with your soul, if you feel called to explore this path of holistic vitality, I invite you to take action right now. Hit that like button to let me know this wisdom touched you. Subscribe to this channel so you can continue discovering Edgar Cayce's profound insights on health, consciousness, and spiritual growth. Drop a comment below sharing your own experiences with vitality and aging, or tell me which aspect of Cayce's teaching you want to apply first in your own life. I promise to mark every comment with a heart, because your journey matters, and together we're rediscovering wisdom that can transform how we age. The forgotten key to staying young that Edgar Cayce revealed is available to every person right now. It doesn't require expensive treatments or special access. It requires commitment to a daily practice of spiritual attunement, mental discipline, and physical care. It requires seeing yourself not as a body that's slowly dying, but as a spiritual being expressing life through your physical form. It requires trusting that the same intelligence that created your body knows exactly how to renew it when you provide the right conditions. Edgar Cayce's legacy lives on through the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, where his readings are preserved and studied. Thousands of people have applied his principles and experienced remarkable transformations in their vitality and well-being. His teachings continue to inspire new generations to look beyond conventional approaches and explore the deeper dimensions of health and consciousness. The question now is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you dismiss it as too simple or too strange, or will you be bold enough to test these principles in your own life and discover whether they hold the power Cayce claimed they did? There's something else Cayce revealed about youthfulness that deserves deeper exploration, something that connects directly to how we experience time itself. In several of his readings, Cayce explained that our perception of aging is intimately linked to our relationship with the present moment. He taught that people who live predominantly in regret about the past or anxiety about the future literally accelerate their aging process. The body responds to these mental time travels as if they were actual stressful events happening right now. According to Cayce, one of the most powerful practices for maintaining youthfulness is learning to be fully present in each moment. When we bring our complete attention to the now, we stop the drain of vital energy that occurs when our consciousness is fragmented across time. He explained that the eternal now is where the divine source meets us, and it's in this present moment that we access the regenerative power of spirit. This teaching about presence connects beautifully with what Cayce said about joy and laughter. He frequently emphasized that joy is not just an emotion, but a healing frequency that revitalizes the entire body. In his readings, he often recommended that people cultivate more laughter, play, and lightheartedness in their daily lives. He wasn't suggesting we ignore life's challenges or pretend everything is perfect. Rather, he was pointing to a deeper joy that comes from knowing our true spiritual nature, a joy that remains accessible even during difficult times. Cayce also spoke extensively about the role of creativity in maintaining vitality. He taught that every human being is inherently creative because we're made in the image of the Creator. When we engage in creative expression, whether through art, music, writing, gardening, cooking, or any form that allows our inner spirit to manifest outwardly, we activate regenerative forces within our being. Creativity keeps the life force moving, prevents stagnation, and maintains that youthful spark of enthusiasm for living. The breath was another element Cayce identified as crucial for youthfulness, though this aspect of his teaching is often overlooked. He explained that proper breathing, particularly deep breathing that fully engages the diaphragm, helps oxygenate the blood and stimulate the flow of life force through the body. In some readings, he recommended specific breathing exercises to be practiced during meditation or throughout the day, as a way of consciously directing energy and maintaining vitality. Cayce's understanding of the relationship between youthfulness and relationships is particularly insightful. He taught that the quality of our connections with others directly impacts our vitality. Relationships built on genuine love, mutual respect, and authentic communication nourish us at the deepest levels. Conversely, toxic relationships drain our life force and contribute to premature aging. He encouraged people to evaluate their relationships honestly and to have the courage to transform or release connections that consistently depleted their energy. One aspect of Cayce's teaching that often surprises people is his emphasis on music and vibration. He explained that everything in creation vibrates at specific frequencies, including our bodies. Music, particularly harmonious and uplifting music, can help attune our cellular vibration to higher frequencies that support regeneration and youthfulness. He sometimes recommended specific pieces of music or types of sound to support healing and vitality. The power of expectation was another key principle in Cayce's approach to staying young. He taught that what we expect tends to manifest in our experience. If we expect to deteriorate with age, if we believe aging inevitably means decline and disease, we unconsciously program our bodies to fulfill those expectations. But if we hold the expectation that we can remain vital, flexible, and healthy throughout our years, we create an entirely different possibility. This isn't naive positive thinking. It's a recognition of consciousness's creative power. Cayce also addressed the importance of what he called attunement to natural rhythms. He taught that human beings are designed to live in harmony with natural cycles, the cycle of day and night, the changing seasons, the rhythms of rest and activity. Modern life often disconnects us from these natural patterns, and that disconnection takes a toll on our vitality. Spending time in nature, respecting our need for rest and honoring the seasons of our own life all contribute to maintaining youthfulness. Perhaps one of the most profound elements of Cayce's teaching on staying young relates to his understanding of karma and soul growth. He explained that we're here on earth to learn specific lessons and to grow spiritually. When we resist those lessons, when we fight against the growth opportunities that life presents, we create inner tension that manifests as aging and disease. But when we embrace our life lessons with grace and willingness to grow, we align with the soul's purpose, and that alignment brings vitality. The practice of gratitude emerged repeatedly in Cayce's readings as a powerful key to youthfulness. He taught that gratitude isn't just good manners or positive thinking. It's a fundamental spiritual practice that shifts our entire energetic state. When we cultivate genuine gratitude for our life, our body, our experiences, and even our challenges, we create an inner environment where healing and regeneration flourish naturally. Cayce's vision of staying young ultimately points us toward a complete transformation in how we understand ourselves and our relationship with the aging process. He invites us to see that we're not victims of time, genetics, or circumstance. We're co-creators of our experience, endowed with remarkable power to influence our physical reality through our consciousness. The body we inhabit is not a machine that inevitably breaks down. It's a living temple, constantly responsive to the quality of our thoughts, emotions, and spiritual alignment. The forgotten key to staying young is now in your hands. It's a key that opens not just to physical vitality, but to a completely new way of being in the world, a way that recognizes your divine nature, honors the wisdom of your body, and celebrates the eternal spirit that animates your form. The choice of what to do with this key and the life it can unlock is yours alone. What if I told you that Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet who gave over 14,000 documented psychic readings, revealed something about adultery that could completely transform how you understand relationships, karma, and the very nature of your soul? Something so profound and disturbing that even his closest followers and the Association for Research and Enlightenment rarely discuss these particular readings publicly. You're about to discover the hidden spiritual consequences of infidelity that Cayce uncovered through his trance states over 3 decades of channeling. And trust me, this isn't your typical relationship advice or moral lecture. This is about the actual metaphysical mechanics of betrayal and how it literally damages the fabric of your soul in ways that science is only beginning to understand. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever wondered if betrayal creates actual spiritual damage that follows us beyond this lifetime? Have you felt like certain relationship patterns keep repeating no matter what you do? Because what I'm about to share will make you think twice about the real cost of unfaithfulness and the incredible power of true healing. Here's what's coming in this deep dive. First, the absolutely shocking case of reading 2533-1, where Cayce revealed how adultery creates what he called soul scars that carry into future incarnations, affecting every relationship you'll ever have. Second, the spiritual law he discovered that makes cheating literally impossible to hide from the universe, a cosmic justice system that operates whether you believe in it or not. And third, the powerful three-step healing process he channeled for those trapped in cycles of betrayal, including a meditation technique that can literally call back fragments of your soul. But let's start with something that might completely surprise you about Edgar Cayce himself, and why these particular readings were so disturbing to him. Most people know Edgar Cayce as the sleeping prophet who could diagnose mysterious illnesses while in a deep trance state, prescribing remedies that doctors couldn't understand but that worked miraculously. What they don't realize is that some of his most emotionally challenging and spiritually complex readings dealt with the consequences of sexual betrayal and marital infidelity. These weren't comfortable sessions for anyone involved, not for the clients seeking help, not for his stenographer Gladys Davis, who recorded every word, and certainly not for Cayce himself when he would wake up and learn what had come through him. People came to him desperate, broken, carrying guilt and shame that was literally eating them alive from the inside out. They'd tried everything: therapy, religion, moving to new cities, even ending marriages. But nothing could stop the downward spiral that seemed to follow infidelity like a dark cloud. Here's where it gets interesting. Cayce didn't approach adultery the way most spiritual teachers or religious leaders would. He didn't see it primarily as a moral failing or a sin to be condemned. Instead, his readings revealed adultery as a violation of cosmic law that creates actual energetic damage to the soul, damage so severe that it affects not just this lifetime, but multiple future incarnations until it's properly healed. In reading 1208 and 12, given in 1936 for a businessman who couldn't understand why his life kept falling apart after a brief affair years earlier, Cayce described how infidelity creates what he called karmic debts that accumulate interest like a spiritual mortgage that must be paid, sometimes across multiple lifetimes. But more disturbing than that, he revealed that these debts don't just affect the cheater, they create energetic entanglements that drag innocent family members, including children, into the karmic web. Let me tell you about Sarah, not her real name, but a case that illustrates this perfectly. This woman came to Cayce in 1932, 3 years after having what she thought was a harmless affair. It had lasted only 6 months. She'd ended it, confessed to her husband, and they'd worked through it, or so she thought. But ever since ending the affair, her life had been falling apart piece by piece. Mysterious health problems that doctors couldn't diagnose, financial disasters that made no logical sense. Her children, who had been well-behaved before, were now acting out in school and having nightmares. Even her pets were getting sick. She was convinced she was cursed. But wait, this is where Cayce's reading revealed something that shocked even him. The betrayal hadn't just hurt her husband emotionally or created trust issues in their marriage. According to the reading, it had created what Cayce called soul fragmenting, literally breaking apart pieces of her spiritual essence that were now scattered across different planes of existence, unable to return to her energy field because of the guilt and shame she carried. Think about that for a moment. What if cheating doesn't just break trust between people, but actually breaks apart your very soul? But it gets even more complex than that. The reading revealed that during the affair, she had created what Cayce termed etheric cords, invisible energy connections, not just with her affair partner, but with everyone in his life, his wife, his children, even his business associates. She was now energetically entangled with dozens of people she'd never met, and their emotional states were affecting her daily life. This changes everything we think we know about infidelity, doesn't it? Now, you might be thinking, come on, that sounds way too mystical to be real. But here's what's fascinating. Cayce backed this up with specific spiritual mechanics that he observed consistently across hundreds of readings dealing with infidelity. And in just a few minutes, I'm going to share the most shocking case study that proves this theory in ways that will absolutely blow your mind. But first, let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed how people who cheat seem to attract more chaos into their lives? It's not just coincidence that serial cheaters often have failed relationships, recurring health problems, financial instability, and family drama. Cayce explained this wasn't bad luck or karma punishing them, it was the natural consequence of violating what he called the law of spiritual harmony. In reading 262-125, he explained that adultery creates what he called vibrational discord in a person's energy field. Think of your soul like a perfectly tuned musical instrument. When you commit adultery, it's like hitting several wrong notes. At once, the discord doesn't just affect that one moment, it throws your entire spiritual frequency out of tune. And that discordant energy attracts similar chaotic frequencies from the universe. Here's the thing that most spiritual teachers won't tell you, and it's probably going to make you uncomfortable. Cayce discovered that the universe operates on what he called the law of spiritual justice, not punishment from an angry God, but natural consequence built into the fabric of reality itself. Just like touching a hot stove burns your hand whether you believe in heat or not, violating the sacred bond of committed love creates spiritual burns that affect your soul whether you believe in souls or not. But here's where most people get it completely wrong. They think the spiritual damage only affects the person who cheated. Actually, Cayce's readings revealed that betrayal creates energetic cords and karmic entanglements between all parties involved. The cheater, the betrayed, spouse, the affair partner, their respective families, and yes, even the children. Everyone gets pulled into this web of spiritual consequence. It's like dropping a stone in a pond. The ripples spread out in all directions, affecting people who had nothing to do with the original betrayal. Let me tell you about James, a case from reading 5:125-1 that perfectly illustrates this principle. This man had carried on multiple affairs throughout his 15-year marriage, always managing to keep them secret from his wife. He came to Cayce not because of guilt. He felt no remorse whatsoever, but because his wife had developed a mysterious illness that was baffling the best doctors in the country. She was wasting away, losing weight rapidly, couldn't keep food down, had constant fatigue, and was developing what looked like autoimmune symptoms. The doctors were talking about experimental treatments and possible hospitalization. James was worried he might lose her, and if he was being honest, he was more concerned about the financial implications and social embarrassment than her actual well-being. Want to know what Cayce's reading revealed? The wife's illness wasn't a medical condition at all. Her soul was literally trying to disconnect from the toxic spiritual energy her husband was bringing into their marriage bed every time he came home from an affair. Her body was manifesting the spiritual contamination as physical disease because her higher self was trying to protect her from energetic pollution she wasn't consciously aware of. Mind-blowing, right? But it gets even more intense when you understand what Cayce taught about the spiritual nature of sexual energy. He revealed that sexual intimacy isn't just physical pleasure or emotional bonding, it's the most potent spiritual force available to human beings. When you share sexual energy with someone, you're creating soul-level bonds that last far beyond the physical act. You're literally exchanging pieces of your spiritual essence. Now imagine what happens when that sacred energy gets scattered across multiple partners while you're supposedly committed to someone else. Cayce described it like trying to power multiple machines with one electrical outlet. Eventually, everything starts breaking down because there's not enough energy to go around. Here comes the part that really shocked me when I first discovered these readings. In reading 1754-1, Cayce worked with a man I'll call David, who couldn't understand why every single relationship he entered ended in betrayal. Either he would cheat on his partners, or they would cheat on him, or sometimes both, would happen simultaneously. It was like he was trapped in some kind of cosmic joke where faithful love was literally impossible. David had tried everything: therapy, support groups, even celibacy for 2 years. Nothing worked. He was convinced he was just unlucky in love, or maybe genetically programmed for infidelity. He came to Cayce as a last resort, expecting to be told he was cursed or that his astrological chart was to blame. Cayce's reading revealed something far more complex and ultimately hopeful than David could have imagined. In a past life, this man had been a wealthy merchant in ancient Rome who made a sport of seducing married women. He would target the wives of his business associates, seduce them, then publicly humiliate them by revealing the affairs to destroy their marriages and social standing. He ruined dozens of families this way, treating it like an entertaining game. Now, in this lifetime, his soul was experiencing every possible angle of betrayal, being the cheater, being cheated on, watching relationships crumble, feeling the pain of broken trust from every perspective. The universe wasn't punishing him. It was teaching him empathy through direct experience, so his soul could finally understand the devastation he had caused others. But wait, there's more to this story that will completely change how you understand karma and soul relationships. The key reading showed that David's current girlfriend, the woman he was desperately trying not to cheat on, had been one of his victims in that Roman lifetime. She had been a young mother whose marriage he destroyed for sport, leading to her social exile and eventually her death from poverty and shame. But here's the remarkable part. She had chosen to be in relationship with him in this lifetime, not for revenge but for healing. Her soul was strong enough now to help him learn what real love looked like. Their relationship wasn't random. It was cosmic justice and mercy playing out simultaneously. Think about your own relationships for a moment. What if the most challenging people in your romantic life aren't there to make you miserable, but to help your soul learn and heal from past lifetime wounds? This is where Cayce's teachings transition from diagnosis to healing, from understanding the problem to actually solving it. He didn't just reveal the spiritual mechanics of adultery. He channeled specific, practical protocols for healing the damage and breaking the cycles. Now, I'm about to share the complete 3-step healing process he developed, but first let me tell you about the most shocking case in his entire collection of readings. A situation so intense that it demonstrates both the worst consequences of betrayal and the incredible power of forgiveness to transform lives. A woman, I'll call Margaret, came to Cayce in 1938 because her husband had not only left her for another woman, but had also taken their life savings and disappeared, leaving her and their 3 children homeless. She was consumed with rage so intense that she was having violent fantasies about revenge. She had tracked down his location and was seriously considering hiring someone to hurt him physically. She was even planning to have an affair with his business partner just to destroy his professional reputation. Margaret wasn't looking for spiritual guidance. She wanted Cayce to tell her the best way to get revenge without getting caught. Cayce's reading stopped her cold with a revelation that changed everything. The reading revealed that Margaret's husband's betrayal wasn't random cruelty. It was actually her soul's opportunity to clear massive karma from a past life where she had been the unfaithful one. In 18th century France, she had been married to a merchant, her current husband's past life, and had systematically drained his resources to fund affairs with multiple lovers, eventually abandoning him and their children to run away with her latest conquest. If she chose revenge now, she would be creating brand new karma that would trap them both in an endless cycle of betrayal and retaliation across multiple lifetimes. They would keep finding each other, lifetime after lifetime, taking turns being the betrayer and the betrayed, never able to break free from the pattern. Instead of revenge, the reading offered her something far more powerful: the path to complete freedom. Here's the complete healing process Cayce channeled, and I want you to understand that this isn't just theory. I've personally witnessed this work for hundreds of people over the decades since these readings were given. Step 1 is what Cayce called complete soul forgiveness, and this is crucial. It's not forgiveness for the other person's sake, but for your own soul's freedom from karmic bondage. Cayce taught that holding on to anger, resentment, and thoughts of revenge from betrayal literally creates what he called spiritual chains that bind you energetically to your betrayer across multiple lifetimes. Every time you replay the hurt, every time you fantasize about revenge, every time you tell the story to get sympathy, you're strengthening those chains. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing the behavior, staying in a toxic situation, or pretending it didn't hurt. It means releasing the energetic poison from your own spiritual system so you can be free to love authentically again. But here's what's crucial about Cayce's approach to forgiveness. He provided a specific technique that makes it actually possible, instead of just a nice idea that never works in real life. The technique involves what he called soul sight meditation. You sit quietly, breathe deeply, and visualize the person who betrayed you not as they are now, but as the pure soul they were before incarnating into this challenging lifetime. You see them as light, struggling with their own wounds and fears, making choices from pain rather than wisdom. From that perspective, you can genuinely forgive them because you understand they weren't trying to hurt you personally. They were trying unsuccessfully to heal their own spiritual wounds. This doesn't excuse their choices, but it frees you from carrying their poison in your energy field. Step 2 involves something Cayce called soul reclamation, and this is where his teachings get really practical and powerful. Remember how I explained that betrayal fragments the soul, scattering pieces of your spiritual essence across different planes? Well, there's a specific meditation process Cayce channeled for calling those scattered fragments back and reintegrating them into your energy field. You begin by visualizing your soul as pure white light in the center of your chest. Then you call out mentally to all the pieces of yourself that were lost through betrayal, both the parts you gave away trying to fix the relationship and the parts that were taken from you through deception and broken promises. As you breathe deeply, you visualize these soul fragments as points of light coming back from wherever they've been scattered, returning to merge with your core essence. Many people report feeling a sense of wholeness they haven't experienced in years, sometimes decades, after doing this meditation consistently. But here's the part most people miss. You also have to return any fragments of the other person's soul that you've been carrying. Holding on to pieces of someone who betrayed you keeps you energetically connected to them, even after physical separation. True healing requires complete energetic independence. Step 3 is what Cayce considered the most important part of the healing process, and it's something he called transforming pain into wisdom. Cayce taught that every betrayal carries within it a lesson that your soul specifically needed to learn in this lifetime. Maybe the lesson is about setting better boundaries. Maybe it's about learning to trust your intuition when something feels off. Maybe it's about healing your own capacity for authentic commitment. Maybe it's about discovering your own self-worth, instead of depending on someone else's fidelity to feel valuable. The key is to extract the wisdom without getting stuck in victim consciousness. Cayce emphasized that we are never victims of our spiritual experiences. We are always students learning exactly what our souls need for growth and evolution. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this might completely change how you think about relationships. Cayce found that people who fully complete this 3-step healing process often end up in stronger, more authentic, more spiritually aligned relationships than they ever had before the betrayal. The pain becomes the foundation for deeper love, because it forces you to develop genuine spiritual maturity. I want to share one more case that perfectly demonstrates the transformative power of this healing approach. A couple I'll call Robert and Linda came to Cayce in 1940 after Robert had confessed to a year-long affair with Linda's sister. Linda was ready to file for divorce. Robert was consumed with guilt and shame. Their teenage children were acting out and failing in school, and both extended families had taken sides in the conflict. Everyone, their friends, their families, even their pastor, assumed the marriage was over. The betrayal was too devastating, the trust too broken, the humiliation too public. Robert had moved out and was living in a hotel, seeing his children only on supervised visits. But something prompted Linda to seek one of Cayce's readings before finalizing the divorce. Cayce's reading revealed something extraordinary that nobody could have predicted. He showed them that this crisis was actually their soul's way of breaking through to a deeper level of intimacy and authentic love they had never experienced before. Not just in this marriage, but in any of their past lifetimes together. The reading explained that their marriage up to that point had been based on social expectations, family pressure and surface-level compatibility, but not on genuine spiritual connection. They had been living like roommates who happened to share children and financial responsibilities. The affair had shattered that superficial arrangement so they could discover what real soul-level partnership actually felt like. But the healing wouldn't be easy or quick. It would require both of them to do deep spiritual work, not just on their marriage, but on their individual soul development. Following Cayce's guidance exactly, they committed to the complete healing process. Linda worked through the forgiveness, meditation daily for 6 months until she could genuinely see Robert as a wounded soul rather than just the man who had betrayed her. Robert did the soul reclamation work to call back the fragments he had scattered through the affair, and also to return the energy he had taken from Linda through deception. Most importantly, they both extracted the lessons their souls needed to learn. For Linda, it was learning to express her emotional needs directly instead of hoping Robert would just figure them out. For Robert, it was healing his childhood wounds around never feeling good enough, wounds that had driven him to seek validation through conquest. The transformation took 2 years of consistent inner work, couples counseling with a therapist who understood Cayce's principles, and a complete rebuilding of their relationship on spiritual rather than just social foundations. 5 years later, they wrote to thank Cayce, saying their marriage had become everything they had dreamed love could be, but had never experienced before. The betrayal that everyone thought would destroy them had become the catalyst for their greatest happiness and deepest intimacy. Their children, who had been struggling academically and behaviorally during the crisis, were now thriving because they were witnessing what authentic love actually looked like instead of the polite but distant interaction their parents had modeled before. Now, here's something most people don't realize about Cayce's approach to adultery, and it reveals the profound compassion that guided all of his readings. He never condemned anyone, no matter how destructive their behavior had been. He understood that sexual betrayal usually comes from what he called spiritual hunger. People who cheat are often searching desperately for something their soul needs, but doesn't know how to find in healthy ways. In reading 3744-4, he explained that serial cheaters are typically souls who carry deep wounds around love, acceptance, and self-worth from past lifetimes. They keep seeking validation through sexual conquest because they don't understand how to heal the emptiness inside through authentic spiritual connection. The compulsive need for multiple partners isn't really about sex or variety. It's about trying to fill a hole in the soul that can only be healed through inner work and genuine self-love. Affairs become like spiritual junk food, temporarily satisfying, but ultimately making the hunger worse. The answer isn't more sexual experiences or finding the right person to cheat with. It's healing the original wound that drives the compulsive behavior in the first place. Cayce provided specific guidance for people struggling with compulsive infidelity, including daily meditation practices, dietary recommendations that support emotional stability, and what he called service work, channeling sexual energy into creative or humanitarian projects that feed the soul in healthy ways. And here's the part that gives me hope. Cayce taught that no soul is beyond redemption. There is always a path back to wholeness, always an opportunity to transform pain into wisdom, always the possibility for authentic love. But it requires spiritual courage, the courage to face the truth, do the inner work, and trust love again even after devastating betrayal. As we wrap up this deep dive, remember this fundamental principle. We are never victims of our spiritual experiences, but always students. If you're struggling with betrayal, understand that your soul can be made whole again. The fragments can be reclaimed, the karma healed, and authentic love is not only possible, but your soul's destiny. Edgar Cayce showed us that adultery violates cosmic laws governing how souls connect across lifetimes, but more importantly, he proved that healing is always possible, forgiveness always available, and true love always worth the spiritual work required. What resonates most with you from these profound teachings? Have you experienced the spiritual consequences of betrayal in your own life, either as the one who strayed or the one who was betrayed? Drop a comment and share your story. Sometimes just witnessing someone else's journey can be part of the healing process. And if this deep dive into Cayce's hidden teachings has opened your eyes to a new understanding of relationships and karma, hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations of the spiritual wisdom that can transform your life from the inside out. Remember, your soul didn't come here to perfect betrayal or to suffer endlessly from the wounds of infidelity. You came here to learn love, authentic, committed, spiritually aligned love that transforms both partners and creates a legacy of healing that extends through generations. The choice of which path to follow, the path of continued wounding or the path of genuine healing, is always yours. Edgar Cayce's readings remind us that every moment offers a new opportunity to choose love over fear, healing over revenge, growth over stagnation. The sleeping prophet showed us that even in our darkest moments of betrayal and broken trust, we are never beyond the reach of grace, never too damaged to heal, never too lost to find our way back to authentic love. The universe is always conspiring to help us learn what we came here to learn, even when the lessons come wrapped in pain. Your soul's journey toward genuine love starts with a single choice, the choice to heal. Everything else flows from there. This preparation stage involves careful planning and consultation with what Cayce called the Council of Souls, or advanced spiritual guides. In one reading, he described these councils as groups of highly evolved souls who have completed their earthly sojourns and now serve to guide others in their spiritual development. These councils operate under divine law and help souls make wise choices about their next incarnation based on spiritual need rather than personal preference. Together with these counselors, souls review their current development, identify areas needing growth or healing, and select circumstances for the next incarnation that will best serve their evolution. Another reading provides extensive detail about this planning process. The soul, in consultation with its guides, examines what has been learned and what remains to be mastered. They consider which earthly experiences would best provide opportunities to develop needed spiritual qualities, such as patience, compassion, forgiveness, or humility. Cayce emphasized that souls actively participate in choosing their next life circumstances, though not always in ways that human personality would prefer. In one reading, he explained, "The soul chooses not for comfort or ease, but for maximum spiritual growth. A soul needing to develop patience might choose a life filled with delays and obstacles. One needing to learn compassion might choose to experience suffering or to care for others who suffer. This includes selecting parents, cultural environment, historical period, and even physical characteristics that will provide optimal opportunities for growth." Another reading describes how souls consider the karmic connections they have with potential parents. Often souls choose to incarnate with others they have known in previous lives, either to heal relationships that were damaged or to continue working together on shared spiritual goals. The readings describe how souls often choose to reincarnate with groups they've known in previous lifetimes. In one reading, Cayce explained that soul groups, collections of souls who have interacted across multiple incarnations, often plan their returns together, taking on different family roles and relationships to provide mutual learning opportunities. A soul who was a parent in one life might return as a child to a former child, or enemies in one life might return as siblings to learn forgiveness and cooperation. This preparation stage also involves the soul reviewing spiritual laws and principles it needs to remember and apply in physical existence. Another reading describes memory banks, where souls store the wisdom they've gained in spiritual realms. While conscious memory of these teachings may fade after birth, they remain embedded in the soul's deeper awareness and can be accessed through prayer, meditation, and spiritual seeking. Some souls require extensive preparation, particularly if they're planning to incarnate into challenging circumstances or take on significant spiritual responsibilities. In one reading, Cayce described souls who spend long periods in training academies, where they develop specific abilities they'll need in their coming incarnation. A soul planning to serve as a healer might study energy manipulation, while one destined for spiritual teaching might develop communication and wisdom abilities. The readings also describe how souls sometimes choose difficult incarnations, specifically to balance previous negative actions. This isn't punishment imposed from outside, but the soul's own recognition of spiritual debt that needs balancing. In another reading, Cayce explained, if a soul caused suffering to others in a previous life, it may choose to experience similar suffering to truly understand the consequences of its actions and develop compassion for those it harmed. Cayce described how the preparation process includes what he called incarnation blueprints, detailed plans that outline the soul's major learning objectives, key relationships, and significant challenges for the coming lifetime. One reading explains that these blueprints are flexible rather than fixed. The soul plans general themes and major learning opportunities, but maintains free will to choose how to respond to these experiences. The blueprint provides structure, but the soul's choices determine the actual outcome. The timing of reincarnation varies greatly according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls don't reincarnate on a fixed schedule, but return when conditions are optimal for their growth. Some souls return relatively quickly, drawn by strong desires or urgent learning needs. Others may spend extensive periods in spiritual realms, either because they need healing, have service work to complete, or because the optimal circumstances for their next incarnation haven't yet manifested on Earth. The preparation stage also involves what Cayce called energy adjustment, the gradual modification of the soul's vibration to match the denser frequencies of physical existence. One reading describes this process. The soul must lower its vibrational rate slowly and carefully to avoid shock when entering dense matter. This adjustment process can take considerable time and is overseen by specialists who ensure the soul's energy patterns remain intact during the transition. Advanced souls often spend extensive time in preparation because they're planning incarnations involving significant service to humanity. In another reading, Cayce described how some souls prepare for lifetimes as spiritual teachers, healers, or leaders by studying with master teachers and developing specific abilities they'll need. These preparation periods might span centuries of Earth time as the soul develops wisdom and capabilities for its coming mission. The readings indicate that preparation includes selecting not only major life circumstances, but also seemingly minor details that will provide important learning opportunities. One reading mentions how souls might choose specific talents, interests, or even health challenges that will guide them toward their planned spiritual development. A soul planning to learn about service might choose a physical limitation that requires dependence on others, while one needing to develop strength might choose circumstances requiring unusual courage and perseverance. Stage 6. Edgar Cayce and the Soul's Journey, a spiritual perspective on life, death, and reincarnation. Throughout human history, one question has persisted across all cultures and civilizations. What happens to our consciousness after physical death? This universal inquiry found a unique perspective through the work of Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, who for over 4 decades provided thousands of psychic readings on various topics, including the nature of the soul and its journey beyond earthly life. Edgar Cayce, 1877-1945, was one of the most documented psychics in modern history. His readings, psychic consultations given while in a trance state, were meticulously recorded and today form one of the largest collections of psychic material ever compiled. Unlike many esoteric traditions that keep their teachings secret, Cayce's work was extensively documented and studied, offering a consistent perspective on fundamental spiritual questions. In Cayce's readings about life after death, we find not a single moment of transition, but rather what he described as a continuous journey of consciousness. According to his teachings, the soul follows patterns and stages that reflect universal spiritual laws. While different readings emphasized various aspects of this journey, several consistent themes emerge that can help us understand what Cayce taught about the soul's experience after physical death. If you've ever wondered about the nature of consciousness beyond physical life, or if you're seeking comfort regarding loved ones who have passed, Cayce's perspective offers both insight and hope. His teachings suggest that death is not an ending, but a transformation, a doorway into expanded awareness and continued growth. Before we explore these teachings in detail, it's important to understand that Cayce's readings present spiritual perspectives rather than scientific facts. They offer one viewpoint among many about life's greatest mysteries. Whether you approach these ideas as literal truth, metaphorical wisdom, or simply food for thought, they contain profound insights about how we might live more consciously in preparation for whatever lies beyond. Central to understanding Cayce's perspective on the afterlife is his fundamental teaching that mind is the builder. This wasn't merely a phrase about earthly existence. According to Cayce, it represents a universal law that continues beyond physical death. The readings consistently emphasized that consciousness, with all its patterns of thought, emotion, and belief, survives the transition we call death. In Cayce's view, the soul doesn't undergo a sudden transformation at the moment of death. Instead, it carries forward the mental and emotional patterns developed during physical life. This perspective suggests that preparation for the afterlife happens not through rituals or last-minute conversions, but through the daily cultivation of consciousness during our earthly existence. The readings describe how our thoughts, attitudes, and spiritual development shape not only our current experience but also our condition in the spiritual realms. This isn't presented as judgment from an external deity, but as a natural consequence of spiritual law. The idea that consciousness creates experience both in physical and non-physical dimensions. When Edgar Cayce spoke about the journey of consciousness after death, he described it as following natural patterns and stages. While the specific details varied across different readings, several consistent phases emerge from his extensive body of work. Understanding these phases, according to Cayce, helps us comprehend not only what may await us after death, but also how our current choices and mental states are already shaping that future experience. Cayce often compared death to falling asleep, not in the sense of unconsciousness, but in the gentle transition from one state of awareness to another. He emphasized that for those who have lived with spiritual awareness and inner peace, the transition is smooth and natural. For those carrying fear, resentment, or strong material attachments, the passage may involve more difficulty, not as punishment, but as the natural result of resistance to spiritual law. The readings suggest that loved ones who have passed before often assist in this transition. Cayce described how souls rarely make this passage entirely alone. There are always helping presences, whether recognized or not, who guide and comfort the departing consciousness. This aspect of his teachings has brought comfort to many who grieve, suggesting that death is not abandonment, but reunion with those who have gone before. What makes Cayce's perspective unique is its practical nature. Rather than abstract theological concepts, his readings offer detailed descriptions of what consciousness experiences as it moves through various stages of existence beyond physical life. These descriptions, drawn from thousands of individual readings, present a coherent view of the afterlife as an active, purposeful continuation of the soul's development. The spiritual dimensions Cayce described are not static realms of eternal reward or punishment, but dynamic environments where consciousness continues to grow, learn, and serve. According to his readings, the soul remains active between earthly incarnations, engaging in various forms of learning, healing, and service that prepare it for future growth opportunities. One of the most profound aspects of Cayce's teachings is the emphasis on personal responsibility. The readings consistently indicate that each soul creates its own experience through the power of consciousness. This places both the challenge and the hope squarely with the individual. We are not victims of arbitrary divine judgment, but active participants in shaping our eternal destiny through our daily choices and inner development. The concept of reincarnation appears throughout Cayce's work, not as endless repetition, but as purposeful return to physical existence for continued learning and service. According to the readings, souls don't reincarnate randomly, but choose circumstances that best serve their spiritual development and the opportunity to balance previous actions through love and service. This perspective transforms how we might view our current life circumstances. Challenges, relationships, and opportunities are not mere coincidences, but carefully chosen experiences designed to advance the soul's growth. This doesn't mean we're trapped by fate, but rather that we're active participants in a cosmic curriculum designed for our highest development. Cayce's readings also address the question of time in spiritual dimensions. According to his perspective, consciousness in the afterlife is not bound by linear time as we experience it in physical life. This allows for what he described as instantaneous understanding and experience that transcends the gradual learning process we know on Earth. The healing aspect of the afterlife features prominently in Cayce's descriptions. He spoke of spiritual hospitals or restoration centers where souls wounded by trauma, hatred, or destructive patterns receive healing and rehabilitation. This reinforces the idea that no soul is ever beyond hope or help, that divine mercy provides opportunities for healing and renewal regardless of past mistakes or suffering. Understanding these general principles provides the foundation for exploring what Cayce described as the specific stages or phases of the soul's journey after physical death. While these stages shouldn't be viewed as rigid categories, they offer a framework for understanding the natural progression of consciousness as it adapts to and grows within spiritual dimensions. Stage 1. The moment of separation. According to Cayce's readings, the first stage begins with what he described as the loosening of the silver cord, the energetic connection between the physical body and the soul. This separation is portrayed not as a violent rupture, but as a gentle release, often compared to the natural process of falling asleep. In one of his readings, Cayce explained, "The silver cord is broken. That cord through which life, as manifested in the physical consciousness, has its connection with soul and spirit." He described this cord as extending from the brain through what he called the Leyden gland, likely referring to the pineal gland, connecting the physical consciousness to the soul body. The breaking of this cord doesn't happen instantly, but rather gradually, like a rope slowly unraveling strand by strand. The reading suggests that this initial separation can vary greatly depending on the individual's spiritual condition and circumstances of death. In one reading, Cayce described how those who have lived with spiritual ideals experience what he called a glorious transition, where the soul slips away as gently as the morning mist rises from the water. For those who have developed strong spiritual foundations through prayer, meditation, and service to others, the separation feels natural and peaceful. However, for others, particularly those who die suddenly or who have strong attachments to physical life, the process may involve more confusion or resistance. Cayce explained in another reading that souls who are earthbound by desires, appetites, or unfulfilled longings may struggle against the separation, creating what he described as a wrestling between the physical and spiritual bodies. This resistance doesn't prevent the transition, but can make it more difficult and prolonged. During this stage, Cayce described how consciousness may hover between two states of awareness, still sensing the physical environment while beginning to perceive spiritual dimensions. In several readings, he mentioned that souls often report being able to see their physical body and observe the reactions of those around them, while simultaneously becoming aware of spiritual presences and dimensions previously invisible. This dual awareness can last from moments to several days, depending on the soul's preparedness and circumstances. The readings indicate that the soul's state of mind at the moment of death significantly influences this initial stage. In one reading, Cayce emphasized that what the soul has built in its mental and spiritual self determines the ease or difficulty of this transition. Fear, regret, or desperate clinging to physical life can create what he called etheric storms that make the separation turbulent and confusing. Conversely, trust, peace, and spiritual surrender create what he described as harmonious vibrations that facilitate a smoother passage. Cayce also described how loved ones who have passed before often become present during this stage, offering comfort and guidance to the departing soul. In another reading, he explained that these helping souls stand ready to assist and often appear to the departing consciousness in forms they would recognize and find comforting. Sometimes they appear as they were in physical life, other times in more radiant spiritual forms. These presences serve as bridges between the physical and spiritual worlds, helping ease the transition. The readings also mention that the soul's beliefs about death significantly impact this stage. Those who believe death is final may struggle more with the transition, while those who understand it as a doorway to continued existence move through more easily. Cayce emphasized in one reading that preparation should include not just moral and spiritual development, but also proper understanding of death as a natural spiritual process. He recommended studying spiritual teachings about the afterlife and practicing meditation to become familiar with expanded states of consciousness. Interestingly, Cayce described how the physical body itself responds during this separation process. In one reading, he mentioned that the soul gradually withdraws from the extremities first, hands and feet, then progressively from other organs, with the final connection being through the brain and nervous system. This explains why some people report feeling cold or numb in their hands and feet as death approaches, and why consciousness often remains clear until the very end. The timing of this separation process varies considerably according to the readings. For some, particularly those ready spiritually, it can happen quickly and peacefully. For others, especially those with strong earthly attachments or unresolved issues, the process may extend over several days. Cayce explained that the soul doesn't fully separate until it's ready to let go of physical concerns and accept its spiritual destiny. Stage 2. The period of rest and adjustment. Following the initial separation, Cayce described what he often called a period of sleep or rest. This isn't unconsciousness in the ordinary sense, but rather a state of adjustment where the soul acclimates to its new condition. Just as a newborn requires time to adapt to physical existence, the newly departed soul needs time to orient itself to spiritual reality. In one reading, Cayce explained this stage in detail. The soul entity passes through that experience as a babe passes into what we call sleep, that condition wherein the physical consciousness is laid aside and the soul communes with those influences that are ever present but not ordinarily aware to the physical consciousness. This spiritual sleep serves multiple purposes, functioning as both rest and preparation for the expanded awareness that follows. The duration of this rest period varies according to Cayce's readings, and he provided specific insights about what determines this timing. In another reading, he explained that souls who lived with strong spiritual ideals and understanding awaken relatively quickly, sometimes within what would be equivalent to days or weeks in earthly time. However, those who died suddenly, violently, or while carrying heavy emotional burdens may remain in this restful state for much longer periods. Cayce described several factors that influence the length of this sleep period. Souls who died with unresolved guilt often require extended rest while healing energies work to dissolve these burdens. In one reading, he mentioned that those who lived primarily for material gain or physical pleasures need more time to adjust to a reality where such things don't exist. Conversely, those who developed strong prayer lives and meditation practices during earthly existence adapt more quickly to spiritual consciousness. During this stage, the soul is surrounded by what Cayce called healing forces that work to restore balance and clarity. In another reading, he described these as emanations of divine love that flow from higher spiritual beings who specialize in assisting newly departed souls. These healing energies work to dissolve fear, guilt, and confusion, while strengthening the soul's natural spiritual radiance. The readings reveal that this period also serves to gradually dissolve the soul's attachment to physical sensations and material concerns. Cayce explained in one reading that the soul must learn to function without the 5 physical senses and instead develop what he called spiritual perception. This is a fundamental shift, from receiving information through eyes, ears, and touch to directly knowing through consciousness itself. Some souls use this rest period to resolve internal conflicts or heal emotional wounds that were carried from earthly life. In another reading, Cayce described how souls often review and process traumatic experiences during this sleep, with the assistance of what he called healing angels, or advanced souls who specialize in emotional restoration. The peaceful environment and absence of physical stress allow for deep healing that wouldn't be possible while incarnated. Cayce also explained that during this rest period, the soul begins to remember its true nature and purpose. In one reading, he described how earthly personality gradually gives way to soul identity, the eternal self that has existed through multiple incarnations. This remembering process can be gradual and gentle for prepared souls, or more dramatic for those who lived primarily through ego consciousness. The readings describe different types of rest environments tailored to individual needs. Some souls rest in what Cayce called gardens of peace, beautiful natural settings that provide comfort and tranquility. Others find themselves in temple-like structures where gentle instruction begins even during the rest period. In another reading, he mentioned that souls often rest near loved ones who passed before, creating family groupings that support mutual healing and adjustment. According to Cayce, no soul remains in this state indefinitely. Awakening always comes, though timing varies with individual needs. He explained in one reading that higher spiritual beings monitor each soul's progress and gently encourage awakening when the time is right. This awakening isn't forced, but occurs naturally as the soul completes its adjustment and becomes ready for more active spiritual experiences. The transition from this rest period to full spiritual awakening is described as gradual and beautiful. In another reading, Cayce compared it to dawn breaking, a slow, gentle increase in awareness and perception until the soul suddenly realizes it's fully conscious in a new realm of existence. This awakening marks the end of the adjustment period and the beginning of active engagement with spiritual realities. Stage 3. Awakening and attraction to spiritual spheres. When the soul awakens from its period of rest, Cayce described how it begins to perceive the spiritual dimensions around it. These aren't vague, ethereal realms, but substantial realities with their own characteristics and inhabitants. The key principle governing this stage is what Cayce consistently described as the law of attraction. Like attracts like. In one of his readings, Cayce provided detailed descriptions of this awakening process. As the soul entity awakens to the consciousness of its spiritual self, it finds itself drawn by the very nature of its being to that sphere, that realm, that condition which is in accord with what it has built within itself during its sojourns in the earth. This attraction operates through what he called spiritual magnetism, an automatic natural force that draws similar vibrations together. The readings describe multiple spiritual spheres or planes, each with distinct characteristics corresponding to different levels of spiritual development. Cayce mentioned in one reading that there are many mansions in the spiritual realm, referencing the biblical passage while explaining that these represent actual dimensional spaces where souls of similar development congregate and continue their growth. For souls whose consciousness has been developed through love, service, and spiritual growth, this attraction leads to what Cayce called realms of light. In another reading, he described these environments as filled with colors beyond earthly imagination and music that is the harmony of the spheres themselves. These realms are populated by souls who radiate love and engage in activities of learning, creating, and serving others. Cayce provided specific details about these higher realms in various readings. In one reading, he described temples of wisdom, where souls study universal laws under the guidance of master teachers. He mentioned halls of healing, where souls learn to work with spiritual energies to assist others, and gardens of beauty, where souls engage in creative activities that express divine harmony through what earthly minds might recognize as art, music, and poetry. Conversely, souls burdened by hatred, selfishness, or destructive patterns find themselves attracted to what Cayce called the borderland, or lower spheres. These aren't places of eternal punishment, but rather environments that reflect the soul's inner condition and provide opportunities for recognition and eventual healing of negative patterns. In one reading, he described these as gray realms, where souls struggle with the very attitudes and desires that drew them there. These lower spheres serve a corrective purpose, according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls in these conditions eventually become dissatisfied with their environment and begin to seek something better. This seeking creates the motivation for growth and change. Advanced souls from higher realms often work as counselors and guides in these areas, helping trapped souls recognize their condition and choose differently. Cayce emphasized that this attraction is not imposed by external judgment, but operates as a natural law of spiritual existence. In one reading, he explained, "The soul finds itself where its consciousness has prepared a place for it. This is not judgment from without, but the natural consequence of spiritual law that consciousness creates experience." The soul cannot hide from itself in these dimensions. Its true nature becomes evident and shapes its immediate environment. The readings describe how souls often experience surprise or shock when they first recognize their environment, especially if it doesn't match their earthly self-image. In another reading, Cayce mentioned that souls who considered themselves religious or moral during earthly life, but harbored prejudice, judgment, or spiritual pride, might find themselves in less elevated spheres than expected. Conversely, souls who lived with genuine love and service, regardless of their religious affiliation or lack thereof, gravitate toward higher realms. Within these spheres, souls encounter others of similar development, creating communities of consciousness that support mutual growth and understanding. Cayce described in one reading how souls often reunite with those they've known in previous lifetimes, continuing relationships and working together on shared spiritual goals. These reunions aren't always pleasant. Souls may encounter those they harmed in past lives, creating opportunities for forgiveness and healing. The law of attraction in spiritual realms also operates on a more subtle level, according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls are drawn not only to general spheres, but to specific areas within those spheres that match their particular interests and needs. A soul with musical inclinations might find itself in areas where celestial harmony is studied and practiced, while one drawn to healing might gravitate toward regions where restorative arts are taught and applied. Cayce also described how the environment itself responds to the collective consciousness of its inhabitants. In one reading, he mentioned that in higher spheres the thoughts and emotions of loving souls create increasingly beautiful and harmonious surroundings, while in lower spheres, negative mental patterns manifest as restrictive or unpleasant conditions. This creates a feedback loop where environment and consciousness mutually influence each other. The transition between spheres is possible according to the readings, but it requires genuine transformation of consciousness. In another reading, Cayce explained that souls cannot simply decide to move to a higher sphere. They must actually develop the spiritual qualities that would naturally attract them there. This development often happens through service to other souls in lower conditions, which builds the love and compassion necessary for spiritual advancement. Stage 4. The Life Review. One of the most consistently described experiences in Cayce's readings is what he called the Life Review, a comprehensive examination of the soul's recent earthly existence. This review is not conducted by external judges, but is guided by the soul's own higher self, that aspect of consciousness that maintains clear spiritual perspective beyond ego and illusion. According to Cayce, this review involves more than simple memory recall. In one reading, he described it as a reliving of every experience, every thought, every action from the perspective of universal law. The soul actually re-experiences its life from multiple perspectives, feeling not only its own experiences, but also the effects of its actions on others. Every thought, word, and deed is examined in the light of spiritual truth, revealing the true impact of the soul's choices. This process can be profoundly humbling for souls who caused harm to others, as they directly experience the pain they inflicted. In another reading, Cayce explained, "As the entity reviews its life, it feels within itself all that it gave to others, the joys and the sorrows, the help and the hurt. There is no hiding from the self in this examination. Conversely, it can be deeply affirming for those who lived with compassion and service, as they feel the positive effects they created rippling through other lives." The review is thorough and honest, leaving no room for self-deception or rationalization. Cayce described in one reading how souls often express amazement at seeing their earthly life from this expanded perspective. The entity sees how small actions created great effects, how seemingly insignificant moments of kindness brought healing to others, and how thoughtless words or deeds created suffering that spread far beyond what was imagined. Cayce emphasized that this life review is not about condemnation, but about understanding and learning. In another reading, he explained, "The purpose is not punishment, but instruction. The soul must understand the consequences of free will choices in order to make better choices in future opportunities for growth. The soul sees clearly what it failed to recognize during earthly life, the interconnectedness of all actions, and the responsibility that comes with free will." The reading suggests that this review is conducted in the presence of what Cayce called the recording angels, or keepers of the records, advanced spiritual beings who help the soul process and understand its experiences. In one reading, he described these entities as beings of pure love who have transcended judgment and serve only to illuminate truth and assist understanding. These guides don't judge, but rather help illuminate the spiritual lessons embedded in earthly experiences. During this process, the soul encounters what Cayce referred to as the Book of Life. Not a literal book, but the complete energetic record of every soul's existence across all incarnations. In another reading, he explained that this record is maintained in what he called the Akashic records, a cosmic library where every thought, action, and experience is permanently stored and can be accessed for learning and growth. For many souls, the life review reveals the need for forgiveness, both giving and receiving. Cayce described in one reading how souls often discover that people they thought had wronged them were actually providing necessary learning experiences, while realizing they themselves had created harm through thoughtlessness or selfishness. This recognition creates powerful motivation for healing relationships in future incarnations. The review also reveals patterns that may have operated below conscious awareness during earthly life. In another reading, Cayce described how souls see recurring themes across their recent lifetime, perhaps a pattern of avoiding responsibility, or a tendency toward jealousy, or a habit of seeking control over others. These patterns become visible as threads running through many different situations and relationships. Cayce explained that the emotional intensity of this review varies depending on how the soul lived. In one reading, he noted that souls who practiced regular self-examination during earthly life experienced the review as largely confirmation of what they already knew about themselves. However, souls who avoided self-reflection or lived largely unconsciously may find the experience overwhelming, requiring assistance from spiritual counselors to process the revelations. The review process also illuminates the soul's spiritual growth during the recent lifetime. Cayce described in another reading how souls can see exactly when and how they made progress, moments when they chose love over fear, service over selfishness, forgiveness over resentment. These moments shine like lights in the review, showing the soul its authentic spiritual achievements. Interestingly, the readings indicate that this review includes not only actions and their consequences, but also missed opportunities. In one reading, Cayce mentioned that souls see the roads not taken, moments when they could have chosen differently, situations where they could have helped others or grown spiritually, but failed to recognize the opportunity. This isn't shown to create regret, but to increase awareness for future choices. The life review concludes with what Cayce called the weighing, not a judgment imposed from outside, but the soul's own recognition of its spiritual condition based on the complete evidence of its recent life. In another reading, he explained that this weighing determines the soul's next steps, whether it needs healing, further learning, service opportunities, or preparation for another incarnation. Stage 5. Activity in spiritual realms. Following the life review, souls don't remain idle but engage in various forms of activity within the spiritual dimensions. Cayce's descriptions of these activities vary widely, reflecting the diverse needs and development levels of different souls, but all serve the purpose of continued growth and service. Some souls remain relatively close to the earth plane, drawn by unfinished business or concern for loved ones still in physical life. In one reading, Cayce described these as earthbound entities who haven't fully accepted their transition and continue to attempt communication with the physical world. However, he distinguished between souls who are trapped by negative attachments and those who choose to remain near Earth for constructive purposes, such as guiding and protecting family members. These earthbound souls may attempt to communicate with or assist those on Earth, though their ability to do so depends on various factors. In another reading, Cayce explained that successful communication requires both the departed soul's development of spiritual communication abilities and the living person's receptivity and sensitivity. He described how some souls learn to influence dreams, inspire sudden insights, or create synchronistic events to convey messages to loved ones. Other souls move into what Cayce described as realms of learning or universities of the soul. In one reading, he provided detailed descriptions of these educational environments. There are institutions of learning where souls study the laws of creation, the nature of divine love, and the principles governing spiritual evolution. These schools are more real and substantial than earthly universities, for learning happens through direct knowing rather than intellectual study. These educational realms operate according to different principles than earthly learning. In another reading, Cayce explained that souls absorb knowledge directly through consciousness rather than through reading or listening. Advanced teacher souls share their understanding through what he called thought transmission, a form of communication where complete concepts and experiences are shared instantaneously. Students in these schools might study the mathematics of creation, the harmony of celestial music, or the healing properties of divine light. Cayce also described realms of service, where souls assist in various forms of healing and guidance work. In one reading, he mentioned souls who specialize in helping newly departed entities adjust to spiritual existence, serving as counselors and guides for those struggling with the transition. Other souls work with those still on Earth by providing inspiration and subtle guidance, often operating through what humans perceive as intuition or sudden insights. Particularly significant in Cayce's descriptions are what he called healing centers or hospitals of the soul. Another reading provides extensive detail about these facilities. There are realms dedicated entirely to the restoration of souls damaged by trauma, violence, hatred, or despair. These centers are staffed by master healers who work with pure spiritual energy to repair and restore the soul's natural radiance and harmony. This healing work addresses not only damage from the recent lifetime, but also accumulated wounds from multiple incarnations. The healing process in these centers involves what Cayce called light therapy, the application of divine energies that dissolve negative patterns and restore spiritual wholeness. In one reading, he described how souls undergoing this healing are immersed in pools of living light that penetrate every aspect of their being, dissolving fear, guilt, anger, and despair while strengthening their connection to divine love. The readings describe how souls may move between different types of activity as their needs and development change. Some alternate between learning and service, while others focus intensively on healing work, either for themselves or others. In another reading, Cayce explained that this variety serves the soul's need for balanced development. As a soul grows in one area, it naturally seeks to express that growth through service, which then reveals new areas needing development. Throughout these activities, souls continue to interact with others they've known in various lifetimes, working together on shared spiritual goals and healing relationships that may have been damaged in physical existence. One reading describes how soul groups, collections of souls who have interacted across multiple lifetimes, often work together in spiritual realms, supporting each other's growth and preparing for future incarnations together. Cayce described specialized service roles that some souls undertake. In another reading, he mentioned guardian souls who take responsibility for watching over specific individuals or families on Earth, providing protection and guidance. Other souls become inspirational agents who work to inspire creativity, scientific discovery, or spiritual awakening in those still incarnated. Some serve as intercession souls who help transmit prayers and spiritual requests between earthly and divine realms. The concept of spiritual creativity features prominently in these descriptions. One reading explains how souls in higher realms engage in divine artistry, creating beauty through pure thought and spiritual energy. These creations aren't art as humans understand it, but expressions of spiritual truth that can inspire and uplift other souls. Music in these realms consists of harmonies that express cosmic principles, while visual arts manifest the very essence of divine qualities like love, joy, and peace. Cayce also described souls who work in what he called laboratories of consciousness, realms where advanced souls study the mechanisms of creation itself. In another reading, he mentioned souls who investigate the building blocks of reality and learn to work with the fundamental forces that shape both spiritual and physical worlds. This knowledge prepares them for eventual roles as co-creators with divine intelligence. The duration of activity in these realms varies enormously according to the readings. Some souls spend relatively brief periods before choosing to reincarnate, while others may engage in spiritual realm activities for centuries or even millennia of Earth time. In one reading, Cayce explained that time itself operates differently in spiritual dimensions, with some souls accomplishing vast amounts of learning and service in what seems like brief periods, while others take extensive time to heal or develop specific spiritual qualities. Stage 6. Preparation for return. Eventually, most souls begin preparation for return to physical existence. According to Cayce's readings, reincarnation is not a punishment or endless cycle, but a purposeful return designed to provide specific learning opportunities that advance the soul's spiritual development. This preparation stage involves careful planning and consultation with what Cayce called the Council of Souls, or advanced spiritual guides. In one reading, he described these councils as groups of highly evolved souls who have completed their earthly sojourns and now serve to guide others in their spiritual development. These councils operate under divine law and help souls make wise choices about their next incarnation based on spiritual need rather than personal preference. Together with these counselors, souls review their current development, identify areas needing growth or healing, and select circumstances for the next incarnation that will best serve their evolution. Another reading provides extensive detail about this planning process. The soul, in consultation with its guides, examines what has been learned and what remains to be mastered. They consider which earthly experiences would best provide opportunities to develop needed spiritual qualities, such as patience, compassion, forgiveness, or humility. Cayce emphasized that souls actively participate in choosing their next life circumstances, though not always in ways that human personality would prefer. In one reading, he explained, "The soul chooses not for comfort or ease, but for maximum spiritual growth. A soul needing to develop patience might choose a life filled with delays and obstacles. One needing to learn compassion might choose to experience suffering or to care for others who suffer. This includes selecting parents, cultural environment, historical period, and even physical characteristics that will provide optimal opportunities for growth." Another reading describes how souls consider the karmic connections they have with potential parents. Often souls choose to incarnate with others they have known in previous lives, either to heal relationships that were damaged or to continue working together on shared spiritual goals. The readings describe how souls often choose to reincarnate with groups they've known in previous lifetimes. In one reading, Cayce explained that soul groups, collections of souls who have interacted across multiple incarnations, often plan their returns together, taking on different family roles and relationships to provide mutual learning opportunities. A soul who was a parent in one life might return as a child to a former child, or enemies in one life might return as siblings to learn forgiveness and cooperation. This preparation stage also involves the soul reviewing spiritual laws and principles it needs to remember and apply in physical existence. Another reading describes memory banks, where souls store the wisdom they've gained in spiritual realms. While conscious memory of these teachings may fade after birth, they remain embedded in the soul's deeper awareness and can be accessed through prayer, meditation, and spiritual seeking. Some souls require extensive preparation, particularly if they're planning to incarnate into challenging circumstances or take on significant spiritual responsibilities. In one reading, Cayce described souls who spend long periods in training academies, where they develop specific abilities they'll need in their coming incarnation. A soul planning to serve as a healer might study energy manipulation, while one destined for spiritual teaching might develop communication and wisdom abilities. The readings also describe how souls sometimes choose difficult incarnations, specifically to balance previous negative actions. This isn't punishment imposed from outside, but the soul's own recognition of spiritual debt that needs balancing. In another reading, Cayce explained, if a soul caused suffering to others in a previous life, it may choose to experience similar suffering to truly understand the consequences of its actions and develop compassion for those it harmed. Cayce described how the preparation process includes what he called incarnation blueprints, detailed plans that outline the soul's major learning objectives, key relationships, and significant challenges for the coming lifetime. One reading explains that these blueprints are flexible rather than fixed, The soul plans general themes and major learning opportunities, but maintains free will to choose how to respond to these experiences. The blueprint provides structure, but the soul's choices determine the actual outcome. The timing of reincarnation varies greatly according to Cayce's readings. In another reading, he explained that souls don't reincarnate on a fixed schedule, but return when conditions are optimal for their growth. Some souls return relatively quickly, drawn by strong desires or urgent learning needs. Others may spend extensive periods in spiritual realms, either because they need healing, have service work to complete, or because the optimal circumstances for their next incarnation haven't yet manifested on Earth. The preparation stage also involves what Cayce called energy adjustment, the gradual modification of the soul's vibration to match the denser frequencies of physical existence. One reading describes this process. The soul must lower its vibrational rate slowly and carefully to avoid shock when entering dense matter. This adjustment process can take considerable time and is overseen by specialists who ensure the soul's energy patterns remain intact during the transition. Advanced souls often spend extensive time in preparation because they're planning incarnations involving significant service to humanity. In another reading, Cayce described how some souls prepare for lifetimes as spiritual teachers, healers, or leaders by studying with master teachers and developing specific abilities they'll need. These preparation periods might span centuries of Earth time as the soul develops wisdom and capabilities for its coming mission. The readings indicate that preparation includes selecting not only major life circumstances, but also seemingly minor details that will provide important learning opportunities. One reading mentions how souls might choose specific talents, interests, or even health challenges that will guide them toward their planned spiritual development. A soul planning to learn about service might choose a physical limitation that requires dependence on others, while one needing to develop strength might choose circumstances requiring unusual courage and perseverance. Stage 7. The return to physical existence. The final stage in Cayce's description involves the soul's gradual return to physical existence. This isn't an abrupt entry into a new body, but a progressive process that begins long before birth and continues for some time after. According to the readings, the soul becomes magnetically attracted to its chosen parents before conception occurs. In one reading, Cayce described this attraction as operating through spiritual resonance. The soul is drawn to parents whose combined energies will provide the exact genetic, emotional, and environmental conditions needed for its planned development. This attraction isn't based on the parents' conscious worthiness, but on their ability to provide specific learning opportunities the soul requires. The soul hovers near the family, influenced by and influencing the energies of the household, sometimes for months or even years before conception. Another reading explains this preliminary connection. The soul that will incarnate often begins influencing the family unit long before physical conception, helping to create conditions that will support its coming growth. This influence may manifest as changes in the parent's spiritual interests, relationship dynamics, or life circumstances. At conception, the soul begins the complex process of merging with the developing physical form. Cayce described this in one reading as a gradual wedding of spirit and matter that requires careful coordination between the soul's energy and the developing body's capacity to hold that energy. This merger isn't instantaneous but occurs progressively as the physical form develops sufficient complexity to house consciousness. Throughout pregnancy, the connection strengthens as the soul adjusts to operating through dense physical matter once again. Another reading provides detailed information about this process. During gestation, the soul works to align its energy patterns with the developing nervous system. The physical brain and body are gradually prepared to serve as vehicles for the soul's expression, though this preparation continues long after birth. Cayce described how the soul's presence affects fetal development and how the developing body is shaped by the soul's energy patterns. In one reading, he explained that the soul's vibrations influence not only physical development, but also the formation of personality tendencies, natural talents, and even health patterns that will manifest throughout the lifetime. This suggests that many characteristics we consider genetic are actually influenced by the incoming soul's spiritual nature. The readings indicate that the soul doesn't maintain constant connection during pregnancy, but moves in and out of the developing body as conditions permit. Another reading describes this variable connection. The soul may be fully present during some periods of gestation and partially withdrawn during others, depending on the body's developmental stage and the soul's ability to function through increasingly dense matter. Birth represents a critical transition point, but not the completion of the soul's incarnation process. Cayce explained in one reading that birth is the soul's commitment point, the moment when it fully accepts responsibility for expression through physical form, though complete integration may take years to accomplish. The trauma of birth itself can temporarily disrupt the soul's connection, requiring a period of restabilization. The readings suggest that young children often retain closer connection to spiritual awareness, which gradually fades as they adapt to physical reality and develop ego consciousness. Another reading describes how children up to age 7 often display memories, abilities, or knowledge that cannot be explained through their current life experience, because their connection to their soul self remains relatively strong during these early years. This gradual forgetting is described as both necessary and merciful, allowing the soul to fully engage with its chosen life circumstances without being overwhelmed by memories of spiritual existence or past lifetimes. However, one reading explains that the deeper lessons and purposes remain embedded in the soul's unconscious awareness, guiding choices and development throughout the lifetime, even when not consciously remembered. Cayce emphasized that each return to physical existence represents a sacred opportunity and responsibility. In another reading, he stated, "Every incarnation is a privilege, a chance for the soul to work with divine creative forces in dense matter, to transform both itself and the world through love and service." The soul that returns brings gifts developed in spiritual realms and has the opportunity to manifest these gifts for the benefit of all. The cycle of death, spiritual development, and rebirth continues until the soul has mastered all lessons available through physical existence. One reading describes this graduation. When the soul has learned to consistently choose love over fear, service over selfishness, and wisdom over ignorance in all circumstances, it no longer requires incarnation for its development. It then moves on to higher forms of service in spiritual realms. However, Cayce noted that some highly developed souls choose to continue incarnating not for their own growth, but to serve humanity's spiritual evolution. Another reading explains, "Master souls often return repeatedly to serve as teachers, healers, and guides for less developed souls. Their incarnations are acts of sacrifice and love, designed to help lift human consciousness toward divine realization." The process of return also involves what Cayce called karmic integration, the soul's acceptance of responsibility for balancing previous actions through love and service. One reading describes how the soul carries forward both the consequences of past choices and the wisdom gained from previous experiences, creating a foundation for continued growth and the opportunity to transform any negative patterns through conscious spiritual effort. Understanding this complete cycle from Cayce's perspective transforms how we might view both life and death. If our current existence is part of an eternal journey of growth and service, then every experience becomes meaningful, every choice carries weight, and every moment offers opportunity for spiritual advancement. Death becomes not an ending to fear, but a graduation to prepare for, and life becomes the sacred workshop where souls develop the love and wisdom that serve them throughout eternity. Understanding these 7 stages provides insight not only into what may await us after death, but also into how we might live more consciously now. If our thoughts and actions are shaping our future spiritual experience, then every moment becomes an opportunity to build a foundation of wisdom, love, and service that will serve us well in whatever lies beyond. Cayce's teachings suggest that preparation for these stages happens through the daily cultivation of spiritual awareness. Practices like meditation, prayer, study of spiritual principles, and service to others all contribute to developing the consciousness that will navigate spiritual dimensions with clarity and purpose. The emphasis throughout Cayce's work is on hope and opportunity, rather than fear and judgment. Death is presented not as an end to be dreaded, but as a transition to be prepared for with faith and wisdom. The spiritual realms are not alien territories, but the soul's true home, where it can continue the eternal journey of growth, learning, and service in increasingly expanded awareness. Most importantly, these teachings remind us that love is the fundamental force operating throughout all these stages. Love guides the soul through transition, shapes its experience in spiritual realms, and motivates its return to physical existence. By cultivating love in our current life, love for others, love for growth, love for truth, and love for the divine, we prepare ourselves for whatever stages of existence await us in the eternal journey of the soul. Whether we view these teachings as literal descriptions or symbolic wisdom, they offer profound insights into living with greater consciousness, compassion, and purpose. They remind us that our choices matter not only for this lifetime, but for the ongoing evolution of our eternal spiritual nature. In sharing these perspectives from Edgar Cayce's extensive body of readings, we hope to contribute to your own spiritual understanding and preparation for life's greatest mystery. Whatever your beliefs about death and afterlife, may this exploration inspire you to live with greater awareness, kindness, and dedication to the spiritual growth that serves both yourself and all of humanity.